Welcome in, Braves Today, bravestoday.com. He's Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor, and it is all brought to you by none other than Plains Coffee. Go to plainscoffee.com, promo code Braves, get your 10% off. Lindsay, Kelenic comes back to Atlanta from the West Coast, and it was like when he got to Seattle, he realized what he hated in life and said he'd make the most of it, and he had a great, I call it a mini series when it's just a 2-game series, a great mini series with Boston. He got his first home run in Atlanta, as well as made a defensive web gem, as they like to call them. And he had a little help from the battery of Ozuna, that we know as Ozuna as well, who continued to show why he is a home run. Is he also RBI leader? Is that just NL, or is that all of baseball?
That's all baseball, as far as I saw, pending the Thursday games.
Well, I am glad you said that, because I argued with somebody on Twitter about that, because I said all of baseball, and they said, no, it's just the National League. And I was like, not according to what I'm looking at. And so, because there's been no games played by the time we're recording this. So
yeah, he's at 38. Soto is next at 33. So he's leading by 5. Not even close.
Yeah. It's not even, and that's what I thought. So let's start with Kelenic. He seems to be, he's been hitting the ball hard already. You and I have talked about that. And even when he hasn't hit it hard, as bad as it sounds, some of the base hits he's got have been the bleeders where he's had a broken bat. But he seems to be kind of coming into his own and is proving why he could be an everyday left fielder.
Yeah, his average exit velocity has been like 88 miles an hour, which is, it's fine. I'm not worried about average. That's more so I look at like 90th percentile and things like that. But when he hits the ball, he's getting the most out of it. His hard hit percentage, 46%. So almost every other ball is 95 miles an hour or harder. And I think that's kind of the reason that his average is low compared to his hard hit rate and his sweet spot rate is I think that's one of those, he's having those bleeders. He's having that lucky contact that falls and things like that. But that, I'm not going to say the most impactful move of the offseason, because I still think Chris Sale being here is a big deal. We'll get to him later. But you legitimately have potentially one of the best defensive outfields the Atlanta Braves have had in a long time, right? We've talked about Ronald Acuna Jr., about he doesn't always make some of the routine plays and things like that. His arm is amazing, and that's the biggest asset there.
Oh, golly.
Michael Harris's range is phenomenal, and his arm is pretty good. Jared Kelenic right now, 95th percentile in arm strength in baseball at 93.1 miles an hour. And the value that he's added with his arm, from a StatCast perspective, 99th percentile. We've seen him multiple times gun dudes out at the plate or at third base. Guys don't run on Ronald Acuna Jr. They're still running on Jared Kelenic. They're going to stop doing that. We saw him rob the home run. On replay, it looked like it may have caught the top of the wall, or it would have caught the top of the wall and come back in maybe, but the line, I think it would have been a home run either way. So he stole that. He robbed that. Huge addition to the outfield, and you have to love what he's doing, right? He's crushing the ball. Yes, that was the first home run. I do think, like we said, he was a little unlucky about that.
Yeah.
Love just about everything he's doing.
Yeah, I will say this on the home run. I don't know if you saw the still shot or not. As he's catching the ball, the woman that seemed unbothered, that never got out of her chair, that she sat there, and there were people. She's already a meme where they've said, "I just want somebody to look at me like she looks at Jared Kelenic when he robs people of home runs." If you guys get an opportunity to find that, go search it up and look for it. I think one thing that's underrated too is his speed. I think he's faster than a lot of people give him credit for. I think that benefits him in the outfield. But how many times have we seen one of those bleeders where he's ended up on second base, where I don't know if Duvall is able to do that. I know if Ozuna's platooning with Duvall, Ozuna's definitely not able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
and honestly, if we still had Von Grissom's speed isn't to the extent that Kelenic's is.
So he has been, yes, one of the most important pieces. I think you and I, there were some people that didn't know how he would take to Atlanta. I thought that this was going to be a resurgence of his career. You and I talked about that whenever this move was made. Yeah. And I said, he came across as one of those guys that like Sean Murphy, that just was not happy where he was, needed a different look, needed a different vibe. And he got exactly what he wanted. And he's one of those guys, if you've seen his interviews, he's all business. And he said that the Braves kind of take it like that. You've got some of the pranksters and jokesters, but when you're in the clubhouse, they mean business. And I think his personalities fit in so well with this group.
Yeah, a lot of guys, and he's one. Like he appreciates how you're coming to work. Like they make it a fun place to work, but you're coming to work, and everybody's professional, everybody's supportive, everybody helps each other. On the base running note, I will point out real quick. I asked the stats guy, 86th percentile in value as a base runner and sprint speed of just under 28 feet per second, which is like top quartile in MLB. So top quarter of guys. So he is faster than average. His base running has been very valuable in relation to the rest of the league. Haven't pulled the leaderboard for the entire team, but I would imagine he's probably one of, if not the most valuable base runner on the team at this point in the season. Because like you said, we've seen him stretch that single into a double so many times. And I'm trying to get that real quick while we're talking. I am pretty convinced it's going to be him at the top. No, Austin Riley is number one in run value.
Look at the big fella.
The big fella running. Yeah. He's been, Austin Riley's been 9% better than average at advancing. It's like what they assume he should have been able to do versus what he actually did. Jared Kelenic's right behind him at 7%. So they've been able to advance more and better than people thought.
Well, what a transition you mentioning Austin Riley, because that replay where the challenge, Atlanta's only had 3. They've successfully won all 3 challenges throughout the season. Probably the most important of the 3 was in the final game of the miniseries against Boston, where Riley was called safe. Ozuna up just after that, after Olsen, and he parks one in the bleachers for a 3-run homer to go ahead and give the Braves the lead. So speaking of Riley, transitioning to Ozuna, who had another big series after being a little quiet on the road compared to what we've been seeing. But he quieted everybody once he got back to Atlanta.
Yeah, he hit, those 2 big home runs in game 2. He almost had another one in the third at bat. And what I love is when he came back to the dugout, the first thing that the guys did was kind of make the working out symbol. Like, hey, man, you got to go get in the weight room a little bit. You didn't have the third one you should have had. So very impressed with what Marcell Ozuna was able to do there. And it's just, he's continued to crush the ball. If you go back and you look at his last 162 games, and full disclosure, somebody on the beat tweeted this out, and I can't remember who it was. Okay. I want to say it was David O'Brien or somebody. But he has like 51 home runs at a batting average over 300. So obviously, if this is all in the same calendar year, it's one of the greatest offensive seasons we've seen on this Braves team outside of, a 40-70 thing in quite a few seasons, right? And he's making the decision to pick up that club option pretty easy because at the end of this year, you have to decide, do we give him a little bit less money than he got this season to keep him around for one more? And at this rate, you're absolutely going to do that.
Yeah, the way he's swinging the bat right now, and the thing that's more impressive to me is Olsen hitting around him is not doing anything. So he's not even getting protection right now, and he's still able to swing the bat, and he's still able to park the ball out in the outfield. So Ozuna has been the pleasant surprise, because I will go ahead and tell you, when it was last season, you know it, I know it, I was one of the ones ready to get rid of him. I would have traded him for 2 backup pitchers that were never going to see the mound if we could have gotten that last year, and they probably still would have hit better than him. And then all of a sudden, his resurgence out of Miami, he has done nothing but just wail. Yeah, he's just raked and wailed on the ball since then. With you giving those stats, that's a full official season, and that's the numbers that you haven't seen a lot of people in a Braves uniform have those type numbers with 51 home runs and batting over 300.
Yeah, and Matt Olson's credit, he's on a 3-game hit streak. He's been on base 5 times in the last 4 games. So, and he only has, I think, 3 strikeouts in that span. So, it looks like he's starting to, get a little bit more of that luck, get a little more consistency. Batting average has come back up to 200, but obviously not where we expect him to be and not what he's capable of doing. It looks like it's a little bit of a timing thing for him, maybe. All of these guys have something, right? Austin Riley's struggling against fastballs right now. Olsen's timing's a little bit off. Ronald Acuna Jr. is getting a lot of low four-seam fastballs, which is not really a thing that's been very common in baseball. We've elevated the fastball for a couple seasons now.
Yeah.
Obviously, it works really well against him. And so they've started throwing him, instead of throwing him sinkers, instead of throwing him elevated four-seamers, they're throwing him low four-seamers, and he hasn't quite figured out how to handle it yet. And so you're doing all of this without those three guys.
Yeah.
Imagine what those three guys, or what will happen when those three guys come back around. But against the Red Sox, you picked up 16 hits, you hit 4 home runs.
Yeah.
You only struck out 10 times. You had 9 runs and 10 strikeouts. Like, that's not a bad ratio. So as a team, you batted .262 with an .814 OPS. You don't hate that, and the hope is you can continue that this weekend when you go to New York.
Exactly. We'll get to New York momentarily. First, we need to thank Plains Coffee for being a part of this. Go to plainscoffee.com. Promo code BRAVES. Get your 10% off. They're going to roast them after you make that order, and then they're going to ship them to your door, and then you can have fresh coffee the very next morning. So go to plainscoffee.com. They also have teas, and they also have flavored coffee, so you go on top of just your regular coffee. Plainscoffee.com. Promo code BRAVES. Get your 10% off. We'll get to New York momentarily. However, before I get to the weird trade that took place most recently, which was just kind of out of nowhere. I didn't see that coming. One of the most, we talked about the biggest pickup being Kelenic in some people's eyes. In your eyes and in my eyes, I'm not so sure that the Grissom Sale trade was not the best. And if that wasn't proven this week with that mini series against Boston, I don't know how to convince anybody if they couldn't see it after what we saw on the field.
Oh my gosh. Chris Sale was phenomenal against the Red Sox. And now part of this, and I wrote this in the takeaways, like, Chris Sale was not going to lose to his old team. Like, that just was not going to happen. He talked about that after the game. Like, a lot of affection for those guys. He loves those guys. But it's business inside the lines. And what you could see from watching that game is Chris Sale knows that roster. He knows that lineup.
He does.
And to finish with 20 whiffs and to get, I think, got 9 of his 10 strikeouts on the slider because he knew how to set these guys up, and then to take it out of the zone and they're just swinging at a ball that's halfway in the other batter's box. And so, like, it's the best he's looked in an Atlanta uniform. Yes, he gave up 6 hits. Yes, I think he only went 6. I say only went 6 innings, 1 walk, just looked dominant. And if that's the Chris Sale that you have, assuming you manage his workloads to get him through the season, that's what you need in October, especially if you don't have, well, since you don't have Spencer Strider. But
yeah,
what a phenomenal outing from Chris Sale. That was one of the more fun games, I think, top to bottom, that we've had this year, between the multiple home runs from Ozuna going back-to-back in the first, Sale being dominant, the home run robbery, entertaining game to cover for me, and then just amazing performance. And honestly, everybody that comes into town, just tell Chris Sale that's the Red Sox.
Yeah, no kidding. Because
tell Ozuna it's the Marlins. Tell Chris Sale it's the Red Sox.
Yes. Well, I said, and well, the way Ozuna batted against the Red Sox, maybe we tell Ozuna it's the Red Sox too. Maybe we just pull Sale and Ozuna in a room and go, "You're playing the Red Sox today," and just let them go. And so I will say this with Sale: he set the tone early on the very first at bat. And honestly, he got and then he even opens up the second AB with in the lineup with a strike that didn't get called a strike. It did hit the K zone, but he didn't. And I thought, oh my goodness, it's going to be one of those days he can't miss. Now, I didn't pull anything like everybody had, like they did with the Marlins and the Dodgers the other night, where I called no hitter pregame like they did, and then they opened up with a home run. But as soon as I saw that first at bat, I thought this could be a special afternoon for Chris Sale against his former team, because they were nowhere close to touching the ball. And the only one that really did get solid contact was, of course, Grissom, and that's because Sale hasn't faced him. And so he wasn't on the team last year. And I was like, oh, great. The one guy that he doesn't know is the guy that's getting hits off of him. So,
one of the guys that also did really well was catcher Connor Wong, which, if you think about that, makes sense, because that's the guy who caught him. He knows Chris Sales is, like, going back to our conversation about Alan Winans, right? He knows the sequences. He knows what the pitches look like on their way to the plate. He knows how Chris Sale does things. So it made total sense that Connor Wong was going to have a big game. And he had multiple, I think he had a either one double and a single or 2 doubles.
Yes.
And then Vaughn Grissom was making the hard contact. Other than that, he shut him down, and it's like exactly what you thought was going to happen.
Yep. I will say this, full disclosure, is I did not like this trade when it first happened. I think I was pretty.
I remember.
I think I was pretty upfront about it. I was concerned of his longevity. I was concerned about his being prone to injuries because he was getting injured on stuff off the field. Like he was. I mean, he was the typical falling down in your bathtub guy. And I was sitting there going, Lindsay, I don't like this. I think we could have got more for Grissom. I don't like it. And then he has done nothing but prove me wrong since he's been in Atlanta, has Chris Sale. So I am pleasantly surprised, and I admit defeat that I was wrong in that particular trade.
That's a point he made to us in the offseason is like, I haven't been fully healthy in years. And like, now that I feel fully healthy and have a normal offseason, I feel like it's going to be a good year. Like, he said it. It's just so many people, especially Boston fans, didn't believe it because they haven't seen it since 2018, 19. So there you go.
This just shows you Anthopoulos is playing chess when the rest of us are playing checkers. I mean, when he did it, you just sit there and you go, we needed pitching. Don't know if we needed that kind of pitching. Well, we did.
Speaking of Anthopoulos playing chess and not checkers.
What goes on with this latest trade, man?
Okay. So 2 trades come out on Thursday before we record. Luis Guillorme going from the Braves to the Los Angeles Angels. Open a roster spot. You're like, okay, David Fletcher's going to come up. They turn around. They acquire DFA'd infielder Zach Short from the Red Sox. So the Guillorme return is a player to be named later or cash considerations, which is capped at $100,000. It's different from when you send cash in a trade with a player's contract. That's different. Okay. This is $100K or less, or a player. The Zach Short deal is just cash consideration. So you probably, whatever the Angels are giving you, you're probably just giving that to Boston and you're done.
Okay.
To me, this was something where Luis Guillorme, really good dude. He's well respected in the clubhouse. Yep. They probably
doesn't wear batting gloves.
Has a great beard. Also told me on the field during batting practice that I had a great beard. See? I appreciate that, Luis. Thank you. This is probably something where you have a chance to lower your cash a little bit because Short's making the league minimum. Guillorme's making $1.1 million. You give him a chance to play, and then maybe you end up finding a decent player from that player to be named later list. We haven't seen the list. Typically, how that works is
okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
Yeah. For a player to be named later, usually what happens is they'll give you a list of names and a deadline, and you have until whatever that deadline is, 3 weeks, a month, 2 weeks, whatever, to decide which of those players you want from that list. And typically, you'll agree to the list before the deal's official. You'll say, yes, I'll pick from one of those 5. That's fine. Or, hey, I need more options than these 5, and they'll give you 10 names instead. So that's typically how it works. Sometimes you'll agree on the name ahead of time, but you'll wait to announce it for some reason. Maybe a guy is on a minor league injured list or something. But typically, it's here's a list of names. We'll look at this, and we'll figure it out in 3 weeks or a month. Gives you time to go scout these guys, see which one you want, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you'll see great guys traded as part of a player to be named later. Shane Baz went from the Pirates to the Rays as a player to be named later, ended up starting postseason games on the mound for the Rays. Like sometimes you can get good players as a PTB&L. Anyway, this to me is just it's going to cost us almost nothing. We can add depth to the organization. We can give Guillorme a chance to play, lower our money a little bit. Maybe they see something in Zach Short that they think he can be more than what he's been so far from Detroit and then the Mets and then the Red Sox. He got in 2 games for Boston, didn't get a hit. He got in 10 games for New York, got 9 at-bats. So maybe it's just something they think they can get some more out of him. When he was with Detroit, his most playtime he ever got was last season, 110 games. He batted .204 with 7 homers, but he played 6 different defensive positions.
Oh, wow.
Yes. He played, he pitched, he played multiple outfield spots, he played second, short, and third. He's got a lot of versatility. It reminds me of Luke Williams a bit. He's got a lot of defensive versatility, can play a lot of places, arguably more than Guillorme. And you're not really going to use him a lot anyway. So I don't necessarily think they're really worried about swapping from one to the other. There's reasons to make the move for Guillorme. There's things they probably like about Zach Short. And maybe there was... I don't really know the entire rationale behind it, but I do know that Alex Anthopoulos is better at this than us, so I'm going to assume there's an ulterior motive here.
He's got some sort of plan for sure.
I'm assuming there's something sneaky. Maybe Zach Short has a cannon for an arm, and they're going to turn him into a relief pitcher. I don't know. Like,
could very well happen. I will say this: him coming from New York. Speaking of which, is that is where the Braves are headed next. They're sending their, I would say sending their studs to the mound in New York, but right now it's not been their studs that they're going to be sending to the mound. And so Morton has been solid. Fried has been okay, except for the last outing, but and then Elder kind of got banged up last time, and the first outing, and Elder got a little banged up last time. However, you and I talked about that outing was not as bad as everybody thought it was. I know that it looks that way, and you see the final numbers and you go, "That was awful." It really wasn't, but it is what it is. You gotta call it what it is. So your expectations as far as the Braves heading up to New York, who I'll say it because we'll have them in our mentions, don't like the Mets. So I mean, I want to see it. I want to see a sweep. So
no self-respecting Braves fan can like the Mets.
No.
It's going to be a little bit of a weird series, right? The times and the broadcast stuff's different. Friday night, Charlie Morton versus Jose Quintana. You're facing a lefty. Atlanta hasn't crushed lefties like they typically did this last season. So that'll be interesting. I think you have the advantage there. Saturday is going to be the most fun for me. Former prospect guy. I used to host Locked On MLB Prospects. Won awards for it. For 2 seasons. Max Fried going up against top prospect Christian Scott, making his second career start. So you don't really have a ton of expectations or knowledge of what to expect from Scott, but going to be a good matchup at 4:10 afternoon game there.
Yeah, it's really weird.
And then Sunday night baseball.
And an FS1 game too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. It's on Bally Sports Southeast and FS1. Yep. That's right. I think it's FS1 outside the broadcast area, unfortunately. And then Sunday, ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, Bryce Elder versus Luis Severino. Severino's been he could be amazing. I think he had a no-hitter last year. Could also be awful. He had some awful games last year. Not sure what to expect. And then we've talked about this. You got to come back home after the Sunday night game to play a game on Monday. And again, if you have to play Sunday night baseball, even if you're not flying across the country, you shouldn't have to play Monday. You shouldn't have to travel Sunday night and then play on Monday. That's just not typically how it works. It shouldn't work like that. If you're going to play on Sunday, you should have an off day on Monday. So the Sunday night baseball team should be off on Monday.
Completely agree. I don't know why baseball hasn't changed that, because they'll tell us in one ear that they're looking out for the health of their players, and then you make them play late Sunday night. And then I understand it's an evening game on Monday, but they still should not have to be flying home Sunday night after a 6 or 7:10 p.m. game that's going to end around 10. Then they got to jump on a plane at 11:30 or midnight, fly home 4 hours, and then basically sleep till lunch and get up and go to the ballpark. So it turns out for a long day. And spare me with all of you going, they're just playing baseball. Just stop. It's a 162 game season. It's rougher on the body and the travel than you really think it is. Look at you know what? All of you that are saying that were the ones complaining last year when we were down due to injury. So there you go. You can't have it both ways.
Remember how we dropped 2 games out of 3 to Oakland?
Yes.
You played Sunday night baseball, and then you flew to Oakland, and you played a game on Monday, and the guys got in at like 5 a.m. They were exhausted, and they played awful in that series.
Exactly. So
you're not going cross country here.
Right.
But it's still a Sunday night game, and then flying afterwards, and then having to play the next day. Atlanta did travel to New York after Wednesday night's game, but Thursday was an off day.
Exactly. And so I am going 2 of 3. I just think that number one, I don't know what pitcher for the Mets is going to show up on Sunday with Severino. I think he's the one that, you're right, had the no-hitter, and I think his next time out he gave up like 10 runs or something. So I don't know which guy's going to show up. Hopefully it's the 10-run giver-upper. Yeah. That's who we get. But if we get the no-hitter guy, Elder's going to have to pitch his mind out. So I'm going to go 2 of 3 with the Braves taking 2 of 3 on the road. I think that's a big confidence booster with getting the bats going against Boston.
This also is not going to be fun for anybody. I'm going to say 2 of 3 as well. That's not fun for everyone here. But that's just, I feels like that's what's going to happen. And then when you come home after that, reminder next week, we do get one of those special booth games again on Wednesday night against the Cubs. That'll be fun.
The 15th, come in the middle of the month. There's it'll be this time Brian McCann in the booth. Smoltz is not going to be in there, I don't think. I think it's going to be Chipper, McCann, Francoeur, and Glavine, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And so it'll be a fun time indeed to see those guys. I'm sure they'll have a big time. The good news is when that happened last year, a lot of home runs were hit. So
the first one was tons of fun. They tried it again. The second one was fine, but the first one was a great game. Tons of fun.
First one was absolutely fantastic. That was Ozzy's walk-off, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
Poor Larry Crown.
Poor Larry Crown.
Yeah.
Still one of the greatest home run calls in the history of the Braves organization, and it wasn't even from a play-by-play person. That's fantastic. Absolutely. On that note, it's all been brought to you by Plains Coffee. Go to plainscoffee.com. Promo code Braves. Get your 10% off. Lindsay's got a ton of written work up on Braves Today and bravestoday.com. You guys go and check that out as well and dive deeper into the best trade of all time, which was the Chris Sale and Vaughn Grissom trade. And I say that because I completely ripped it apart when it first happened. So I owe him that. Lindsay, as always, I greatly appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, buddy.